So we're going to talk about profiling PHP applications. First of all, who likes slow applications? Really? No one? Will it only be about faster execution time, or do we want less resource consumption, or do we just want more requests per minute? Something like that. And usually profiling starts happening when you see this. In your monitoring, there are white gaps. If you open something like htop, it's like, nah, not really great anymore. Or in your monitoring, you see red bars coming up. Not that great. Usually then the profiling starts. So yeah, Gabriel introduced me. You can see me on Twitter. See me, I don't know, whatever. Read me on Twitter. So I'm a developer and I do some operations at Studio Emma. Studio Emma does Magento and Pimcore. If you want to know more, come and see me afterwards. So first, profiling. So profiling is the process of application runtime characteristics, very important, measurement for performance analysis and optimization. So what do we gain from profiling in the first place? We get information about where something is slow, where something uses a lot of resources, where there are other possible bottlenecks. We also get some information about what, or probably what, is causing it. We get an idea how much it impacts our application. And then you get this question, but why? My application is fast. Okay, define fast. What is fast for you, or what is fast for your customer? Also, can it handle a burst? So usually you have 1 or 2 people on your website and suddenly there are 100. Will it hold? In any way, optimizing your application has benefits. Even if you have not really that much traffic, it can save you in hosting cost or whatever. Then you have the smart ones. Well, we don't need a profiler. I already know where the problem is. Yeah, maybe, but that's like darts. If you don't know how to do it, it's gonna end up somewhere. But that's not really it might be an educated guess, but you are not really sure that's the problem you're seeing or what's causing it. So first we have the points of interest where we see the execution time. So that's usually the first thing we look at. Oh yeah, it takes 3 seconds or 2 seconds to do something. But also interesting is to know how much time of this execution time is spent on CPU power. The memory usage can usually also be very interesting to be aware of, what uses a lot and what doesn't use a lot. And disk I/O is a tricky one because yeah, you will see slowdowns in applications that get a lot of traffic due to disk I/O, but sometimes the disk I/O can also be externally, well, the disk I/O can be not from your application, but from another thing running on your same machine. And network time is also very interesting to know because sometimes you're just dealing with a slow external service. Well, external relays. That can also be your database. But how can we profile in PHP? Will we use PHP itself? Is it a good option? Well, I would say not really, because it's not really profiling. We get some information. You can do this with the microtime and know how long something takes. You can get some other information from PHP, like memory usage, but yeah, you don't really get insight in where something is happening. You just know for your whole run, yeah, it took so long, it took so much memory, that's it. So the first way we can profile PHP is Ydebug. I don't know if you knew that Ydebug has also the profiling functionality. Usually we only use it for debugging. So it's a PHP extension, you need some configuration, and you use an external tool to analyze the file that Ydebug outputted on your disk. So it's very simple actually. So if you already have Ydebug, you just add Ydebug profiler enable 1, you set some output directory, and you give it some form of a name. Here the wild card character is just that it uses the timestamp. Maybe you find more useful suffixes. So you can analyze a profile. It's not that clear, but doesn't really matter. You have a web grind or a k-cache grind, q-cache grind, whatever. One of the cache grind tools you can find that can read the cache grind file you got from Ydebug and get some information from it. The most important drawback with modern applications is that usually there is a limit in how many function calls the tools will let you will show you. So from q-cache grind there is a maximum of 500 function calls displayed to you, but probably in your application there will be a lot more. So that's one drawback there. And this is a very useful visualization, but it's hard. So it's kind of hard to pinpoint. Well, with Ydebug profiling you can pinpoint something that is really, really slow. But if it's in the details, you probably spend a lot of time checking things and rechecking things and probably not really finding out what's happening. Then we have XHProf. I don't know how many know XHProf, or maybe from the old days. So XHProf these days with PHP 7+, it's I personally use it with the Tideways PHP extension. There is also another one, but I don't recall the name from my head. So, but I personally always use the Tideways PHP extension. It's the same. It's also some configuration, and I use XHUE for the visualization because it's better than the built-in. So it's fairly simple. You also say, yeah, I want this extension. The important part here to use actual XHProf is to say Tideways auto-prepend library to 0, because if you by default use this Tideways extension, it will try to use the SaaS platform. But here in this case, we want to use it as an XHProf drop-in replacement. And I use a prepend file to configure what I'm looking for. So this is a very short, well, this is the introduction, how it's kind of done. So you say, I want, on startup, I want Tideways enabled. I'm interested in the CPU flags, the memory, no spans. Let me check that, what it doesn't mean again, because it's a while ago. I already configured this for everything. And then in the shutdown function, we just gather the information from Tideways, add some information from the server variables, and store it on a file that then will be imported in the MongoDB for XHUE. So it looks like this if you've done nothing yet. And then you get an overview. So every run, it profiles everything. So every request you do, it's not readable on this screen, but it's just the request path that's there. Within the time column, just when this request happened. And then you can get the information from a specific request and say, yeah, we see what was the wall time, which are the biggest consumers of this, the memory hogs, so you see already some information directly there. This is actually an interesting slide because the composer autoload include file takes the most of the time, which is not really why we want to use composer. We did actually have this in an actual project. So, well, for the insiders, it's a Magento project. Where we saw that the include file was really taking a lot of time. And we really spent a lot of time to find out what the problem was. So what happened? There is opcache enabled on all our application servers, but maybe we didn't check everything well enough and it was just on the default. Because Magento is a fairly large project, it kind of pushed out things from opcache because there was not enough space to put in new things. But this took us a long time to realize that the opcache was too small and that caused the composer autoload include file to be really slow because it always went back to the disk to get the class definitions again and get them back in opcache, which pushed out something else, which in turn then had to be re-inputted in opcache, which, yeah, so you get the idea. So it was fixed by just increasing opcache memory. And then you don't see this problem anymore. So then, if that's the same screen, but scroll down to the function calls, you also can sort on what takes longest, what has most memory, what's the most CPU usage. You can try to find out where you're interested in. So that depends on your problem. If you don't care about the execution time, but really want low memory footprint, you're going to look for that. You also get a call graph. This can get very complex, very fast. So for XHProf, it's still a local setup. And with the configuration as I use it, it profiles everything. So you don't have to do anything anymore. You just say, well, enable it, and then it profiles your command line, scripts your requests, everything. It doesn't look really fancy, but maybe that's not a real drawback. And then, of course, you have Tideways because we already used it, this extension. So it's the same again, it's the same extension, but it needs a daemon for communication to the cloud platform. And you trigger it with a browser extension or a application you prefix before your PHP script. There is some configuration, a token, and as a nice addition, it has APM functionality. If you don't have this already, that's a nice bonus. And it's a 30-day trial, but you get all the functionality in these 30 days, so you can really review the functionalities that you're looking for. So it looks kind of like this. You see, this is just the APM traffic where you see some requests. It also indicates, because I did this on a development machine, it also indicates that the biggest performance problem will be Ydebug. But yeah, it was still enabled. I didn't want to turn it off just for the sake of a demo. So you have an extension that you need to install, and then you click the button, take a profile, and then that request will be profiled by the extension and will be visible in the dashboard. So it's just very similar to what we've seen in XHProf in terms of functionality. It shows you some graph here, what was called when. You get the function calls here. So it's very similar, but it's a cloud platform, so it might be better suited for you if you want it. Also, it is more than a profiler. It's fairly easy to use. You have a trial that goes to paying, but that's not usually a problem. And then we have the most known one, I think, is Blackfire. And I'm gonna repeat myself over and over because it's probably the same thing again, so it's an extension, but it's freemium. So in this case, the freemium part is that you have a free plan where you have very limited functionality. I think it's only execution time and memory. And if you want like CPU time or disk I/O or other external stuff, you really need to pay directly to see if it works for you. So it's the same thing again. You need an extension, you profile it. If you do it command line, you prefix Blackfire PHP my fancy script, and then that will be profiled. The biggest problem for me with Blackfire is that their default is they gonna run your request multiple times. So in this case, for example, if you really want to know how good this page behaves when you disable some caches, you really need to disable these caches and don't just throw out some cache, run the profile, and it will show up what it has done, because Blackfire will do multiple runs and then say, oh, we see that it's usually 300 milliseconds instead of the first run was 3 or 4 seconds, for example. So by default, it displays a call graph. This is Magento, so it's fairly big call graph. But you don't get that much information in the free version. So if you want to use Blackfire, just pay for it and use it like that, because the free version will not get you there, well, give you all the information you really need. So it's fairly easy to use. The freemium part bothers me a bit, but it's not that expensive, so that's not that bad. So if we compare it, if someone has better skills than me to visualize this, please help me out. So we have Ydebug, that's local. The biggest drawback is that it's relatively hard to interpret the results you get. XHProf, it's still local. It's also fairly easy to use. And then you have two cloud things or platforms, Tideways and Blackfire, that have similar experience, where Tideways also gives you this basic APM functionality. So if you want to use this in production, this might be interesting. Now there is a new kit on the block, but I didn't really test it. So, well, I saw it in action, but I don't have very much hands-on experience with it. But that's PHP Spy. This is, at the moment, it's Linux only. But there is a ticket for macOS support, and I don't know if there is an issue for Windows support. Maybe not. But it looks very promising, because this is a sampling profiler, so the overhead should be less than all the others we have seen already. And it has, oh yeah, so this. The biggest drawback here is that it must be built against the correct version of PHP. That was the last thing I heard, that you really need to build it against the version of PHP you're going to profile against. So that might be an issue. And the Linux only part depends on your environment, I guess. So but it looks cool. So this has some top-like functionality where you can see it in semi-real time what is going on in your application. It also has a variable spying on the variables, the peek on the variable. So if you want to know what, I think the sample is on line 10, it shows during the run what the new value of that sample is. And what I really like is that it has the flame graph functionality, so you can output the information, put it in a flame graph, and then go click through on it to dig into the flame graph where your potential bottleneck is, because personally I like this visualization very much to dig deeper and to find the bottleneck really fast. But it's fairly new and yeah, probably has some rough edges still. I personally also have to get more hands-on experience with it to really know what are the drawbacks, are there things that it can't do yet, or so. A really important part is pick one of these tools and learn it first. You will find out if it has some drawbacks or it has missing functionality that you really need to get to the proper result. But first learn one and then try to explore the others to find out if they have other functionality, the other for your missing functionality. So now, how do we approach the profiling itself? So what will we do first? Usually we will try to find the slow things first. This only comes from information you have probably from your production server or your testing infrastructure that has some load on it. So, or the things you predict that will be slow, that you are going to try to optimize before you go live. Usually, you're gonna try to make the popular things fast. So if you have, to keep it in the e-commerce, if you have an e-commerce shop, you probably want to have the catalog pages that these go fast, that the search go fast, and that the overall browsing experience and scrolling through things that works really well. And also the application initialization that we have seen already before, that composer autoload include file, we don't want that to be the slow part. So what we are going to do is analyze the profile, and first we're going to find the hot paths. Fortunately, these profilers help you to identify the hot paths, because the slower things are, the redder it will be in the visualization, in the call graph. So usually you can follow along from the very red to less red, that you can try to find out what's actually causing the slowdown. There you find the cause, you fix it, and hopefully it's better. If not, you try to find it again with your fixed or updated code and see if you can get it to improve. So there is a little demo that is taken from a real application. So some context here. There was a website we built that where they didn't really want to get you to just pay, but they wanted you to buy coins, some sort, ahead of time, and then you can use the coins later on in the process. And their idea was, yeah, well, a coin will be 100 euros, and usually everything we sell will be a multiple of 100 euros. Okay, fine, no problem. So, yeah, we have to buy some coins. So if we have a coin value of 100 euros and we buy for 1,000, we just get 10. It's not really slow, it's not really fast, but it's okay for this case. And then there was another party involved where it kind of split in two, and they wanted the same website but for different departments, but they wanted it different. And there they said, yeah, but no, we don't want the coins, but yeah, sorry, but the whole site is built around coins. Oh, I'm in the way. Yeah, sorry. So the whole site is built around coins. Yeah. So, but they said, yeah, we have a solution for it. No problem. You just set the value of the coin to 1 euro, so I'm gonna duck a bit. But everything will be fine. Yeah. And then they said, yeah, we'll buy for 100,000 euros because we want to give all our people in our company some coins so they can spend these coins on some training. And then we got some angry call. Yeah, we can't buy for 100,000 euros and we want it now because we want to give it to everyone, and yeah, and it's broken, and yeah, it was not really fun. So yeah, this will go on for a while. Oh, it's reasonably fast. So if we look at it, we see the first ones were around 1 second. For 1,000 euros, it already went up a bit, and then for 100,000, it's already really bad, relatively bad. So first, we tried to look at the reference. So I cheated a little bit because this is not the whole application. So I tried to fake the rest of the application with sleep 1 second. Sorry. So, but that gives you a reference. And if we go to the call graph, which is fairly simple now, so it will not be that hard to analyze. It's just normal. The rest of the application is taking the most of the time. So this is the sleep that pretends to be the rest of the application. But then we got here, that was a little bit slower, but not really problematic. But then they tried to buy too many. Well, not really, but. And we saw PDO statement execute. Okay. Yeah, not really great if we spent 18 seconds talking to MySQL. Yeah, what have we done there? So again, we go to the call graph, and it should zoom. That's not good. Yep. And suddenly, the rest of our application is no longer the hot path. So we move here and see, create and store coins takes like almost all the time that the request takes, and then it goes to PDO statement execute somewhere in this coin service store coins. Okay, what do we do there? Store coins. Yeah, so oops. Yeah. Oh yeah, really nice. So you see the problem popping up already. So instead of inserting all the coins at once, the abstraction of the platform we were using just looped over it and it one by one. So this got really bad really fast. And it did some other stuff you don't really want. So the thing here was also watch out with changing requirements, because initially it was not really a problem that the underlying system did this like that, like just looping over it and just do inserts, never mind. So what we really didn't pay attention to was, yeah, they changed the requirements, but we didn't look at the code. It was like, yeah, okay, you say it will be fine. Yeah, okay, it will be fine. We'll see. Yeah, that didn't work out too well. But eventually we just had to rewrite the way things were stored and how things were checked, if there were coins available and so much, and so on. So, yeah. This was a very easy example. Oh, I have another one. But in real life, it's not that simple. In real life, you get something like, oops. Get the right one, yeah. Ooh, ah. It's an empty Magento, so it's still relatively fast. It's an older version because it's fairly clear where the problem lies there. So you first, yeah, it's slow by default, but gets better. So we get some pages, and then you get. So I'm gonna kind of cut to the chase, cut to the point where I know there is a problem. So once we get things in cache, it's like, yeah, okay, 300, 400. It's with profiling on, so not really that bad. But contact, just a stupid form. Contact us, really? So yeah, contact us, stupid form, takes 1.8, 1.6 seconds. Why? It only has a form. So we go and look into it, and it's, yeah. Here, if I go into detail, it might get out as gibberish if you don't really do Magento. But at some point, I'm gonna have to find it back. We saw something where the view was being re-rendered all the time. Every request, the view was being re-rendered, and we wanted to know why. But this is not going to zoom very well because it's big. Whoops, and it's gone. Yeah, where is it now? Yes, somewhere here. So it's a big thing. Yeah, it might be pointless to try to find it live. No, it's not that one, but somewhere there is. So yeah, here, this is already an indication. It always passes through render non-cached element. So it's not really great that your contact page is the slowest page of your application. So we just wanted to know what was going on. And actually behind this, there is a server-side CAPTCHA that's being rendered. So Magento says, oh, we can't cache this page because we rendered the CAPTCHA server-side. So that's why, in this case, we found out that it was really slow. But you can already see that this call graph is, yeah, getting messy very fast. So it's not always really straightforward to find out where things go wrong or go slow. So popular bottlenecks, slow code. Yeah, I've seen some really interesting examples somewhere. I don't know. Do you know it? I don't know. I'm not sure. I think it was in another presentation and some also about profiling, and it was like, yeah, there is some HTTP request and it takes like 3 seconds. And with profiling, they found out that there was just a joke in it where they calculated pi to whatever number just for the fun of it. But yeah, that was the slow code. So yeah, you can do it if you want to have an easy improvement in the future. Also, bad SQL queries are also very popular. So you start with a small number of small volume of data. It goes fast. There are no indexes. There's no need for indexes, and then it goes slower and slower and slower, and then eventually it accumulates in a slower website. But you should see this coming in over time if your updates are not really feature heavy and your site goes slower and slower and slower over time. You probably have to investigate in some stuff. Disk.io is always popular, and you will not always see that it's your application. We had issues with rogue backups that suddenly during the day, like 12 o'clock when everybody is going to eat and check their favorite e-commerce site, some backup kicks in and says, yeah, we drag out everything and yeah, the site is slow, why? Then yeah, we find out. Sometimes it's your application, but a cron job of your application that kicks in. Maybe you should take care of that. This also happens, bad external services. So prepare your code for every request you do to something external to fail. And don't wait forever for it. Or don't use the default timeouts, which are like 60 seconds, 30 seconds. Nobody likes these long waits. And eventually, this happens, an angry client calls you, yeah, everything is broken and nobody gets on the pages and everything is slow and this and that. First response, don't panic and don't try to fix it. I should add this. First, what we do is just add more CPU, more RAM, and get it normalized, because if it's a DOS or something, yeah, you first want to, voila. You also want to block the malicious actors. If you see a ton of requests of a single IP address, just block them. And then if things get normalized, then try to solve your issue. So yeah, said that. Find the slow parts and start profiling. Also, what you might need in production to find out or to see it ramping up is some monitoring. I hope everybody does this in production. An APM like Tideways or what we have, Datadog, I think has an APM, and New Relic are useful to get insight in your application performance. Once things break down, ATOP, I don't know how many people know ATOP. It's a really, really powerful tool to do a retrospective. If you got crashed, if someone DOSed your server and it just crashed, ATOP has the historical data, so you can see if it's PHP if it's your FPM that is maxed out, or if something else, if MySQL is going wild because there are too many requests. So it's very, very useful. If you really want to, you can strace on a live server, just for fun. you sometimes get useful information out of it. So, in closing, try to find the slower things while you're developing. So, actually don't wait to profile until things are on fire in production, but try to use profiling on a regular basis to get an idea how your application progresses over time. My personal favorite currently is still XHProfit, XHUE, because probably I just know how to use it. And also don't trust profiles from system under stress. This is kind of important because if you have an APM, they will probably make it worse if you're DOSed than make it better. And the information you get from it will also not be useful, because if your system is under stress and there are stack traces or profiles taken, it's not really pointing you in the right direction. Make all your popular pages cacheable, really. That's very really useful. And profile regularly. That. And I think there Blackfire has a really nice feature that you can use it in your unit testing or your CI/CD flow, where you get the information and you can see the progression of your application. That it's, if it runs through the test and it's that much slower, that you can get an indication, oh, we added feature X, and feature X causes maybe some 5% slowdown in the overall application. So it's useful. So are there questions?
What is APM?
Application Performance Monitoring, or metrics, depending on what you want. So yeah, it's usually something you want to run in production because that's where the real traffic happens. So, but depending on, well, we use New Relic. I don't want to sell New Relic to you, but depending on the framework you're using, the performance overhead can be high. We had, I think, between 10 and 20% slowdowns on Magento. So usually we don't turn it on too much, or turn it on only in small time frames to get an idea, but not all the time. Because, yeah, the more complex your application gets, the more overhead it has. Yeah, sorry.
You already gave you this 20%, 30%.
Yeah, well, just rough. Like if you use browse to it, it was between 10 and 20% slowdown on. Also bit depending on the page you're hitting, but yeah, it's a lot.
Does New Relic also profile?
It gives you insight in, for example, your MySQL. How long does your MySQL queries take? I think you can turn it on and it logs the queries, but that's really expensive. If you compare it with the beats like packet beat and metric beat and so on, the packet beat is also very expensive. If you use Elasticsearch with their metric gathering beats, the packet beat is also the most expensive one. That also gives you a lot of it also uses a lot of resources. When we played around with it, and initially it was like, oh yeah, packet beat is like the highest CPU consumer we have in our system. And we didn't do anything yet, or maybe loaded 2 or 3 pages. It gives you a lot of insight, but it was too expensive to enable by default. So yeah, you can also use Elasticsearch for some of these metrics. But to answer your question, New Relic gives you stack traces. So then it's kind of profiles what's slow. But you have to first take into account the rest of the metrics to make sure your system is not overstressed at that time period, and then trust the profile. Not if there is too much load on it, you shouldn't use this profile, but try to find another one.
I have a question. I saw a couple of slides ago that your personal choice was XHProf.
Yes.
With the web GUI
Yeah, yeah.
What makes you choose that in favor of Blackfire, which can be enabled on CI/CD, and you can enable Magento metrics?
Because how we work is we have New Relic, so we don't really have the need to have these information from production based on Blackfire. There is a point for Blackfire in CI/CD, but we are not there yet. Well, not there. We have CI/CD, but we don't have these kind of tests. So currently, in my situation, this is my go-to solution. This is not the go-to solution for you or for someone else. If you have Blackfire, use Blackfire. It gives you the similar information. The visualization is a bit different, but doesn't really matter. It gives you the information that something is slow there, something is slow there. You can go through it. So my personal preference is what I know and how I work with things, or how I work with things in the company I work in. So we have this production information from New Relic. So usually we profile with XHProf in development. If you need to start from scratch, you could go with Tideways, Blackfire, as you like. So I'm not trying to sell you XHProf or something. That's only my personal preference. But they give you similar, well, actually the same results practically. So there's more a difference in pricing and features they give you for free or not. So that's the most important. More? Nope. Thank you then.